Welcome to this episode of Talkin English. Today I am joined by Greg Hunt, the owner-operator of Amsterdam Billiards, the iconic venue in Manhattan, New York. Greg, thanks very much for joining me.
My pleasure, Dale.
Always. So we're going to dive into some questions here. As I said to you before, we really like to keep it industry-focused on Talkin English. So really, I want to dive into the first question. How did Amsterdam Billiards come about? And how long have you been operating in New York now?
When I was 12 years old, this is going back to 1970, before you were born, my parents, they were renting this rent-stabilized apartment on the Upper West Side, and they knocked down a couple of walls, and they bought a pool table and squeezed it into the living room that was a combined living room and dining room.
Wow.
And so I was 12, and I started to play pool. And I got, pretty good at it. I wasn't by no means a pro. But then fast forward about 25 years till I was, fast forward about 17 years. I was in my late 20s working on Wall Street, and I read about an upscale pool hall opening up. It was called Chelsea Billiards.
Oh, wow.
In retrospect, it wasn't that upscale, but for the time it was. And long story short, I was working on Wall Street, but I wanted to jump off and start open up my own business. Wasn't sure how to do that or what to do. Mm-hmm. But I saw that and it kind of clicked, and the rest is history.
You mentioned Chelsea Billiards. When was that? Was that like an iconic room back in the day?
It was. I'm guessing it opened around 1987 or 1988. And it was really a player's room. And really for the serious players, and it was, I forget how long it was open for, but it was open for quite some time, maybe about 15, 20 years, and eventually it was bought out. It's a nightclub now. It's really no longer a pool hall.
Is that where Slate is?
Yeah, exactly.
I see. So I know the one you're talking about, but this wasn't the first venue. Where was the first venue for Amsterdam Billiards?
The first Amsterdam Billiards we opened up was on Amsterdam Avenue, hence the name. Between 76 and 77th Street, for those New Yorkers that are listening or watching this. So it was on the Upper West Side, which is where I lived at the time, which was kind of convenient. And we opened it we signed the lease in 1989, actually. So we technically we incorporated in 1989, which gives us another decade of history. Anyway, but we opened on March 9th of 1990.
This episode is brought to you by Integrity Cues, BSN's trusted source of premium pool cues and accessories. Shop the entire inventory online now at integritycues.com.
But we opened on March 9th of 1990.
That's so much history, and what forced you to move initially down to this location?
Well, we actually have had 3 locations, not 2.
Oh, really? And
we after we opened up the Upper West Side in 1990, we opened up a location on the Upper East Side in 1996, and that was open for almost 10 years. It was on East 86th Street, and we ran that simultaneously with the Upper West Side location.
The Second Avenue,
between 2nd and 3rd. But it was downstairs. There's another pool hall there called East Side Billiards.
East Side. I'm making sure I'm not confusing the two.
Yeah, no, it was the biggest of all 3 clubs that we've owned. It was 15,000 square feet, and it was a city block long. You would enter on 86th Street, and if you walked to the back and exited out of the back, you would be on 85th Street. So it was a huge, cavernous.
So the 2 locations they were running together.
The East Side and West Side were running together. The East Side we never made money on, even though it was a favorite club of some of our regulars. It was the only club we opened that was not profitable, and so when our lease was up after, I think it was just under 10 years, we didn't renew the lease.
That's so interesting. That's why I love to do these things, because I just learned something new. I could have swore you only had 2.
Nope. This is
okay. I'm not a native New Yorker, but this is kind of this is all interesting to me. So with that in mind, how important again is location for you guys? And obviously where you are now in the kind of very NYU kind of university district, how important is that?
Yeah, location is one of the key factors in having a successful billiard club. It definitely is.
I just imagine, I mean, you pay in rent what most people own a pool hall for. So
Well, it's Manhattan, you know, so obviously, and it's ground floor retail space in Manhattan. So we pay a lot of rent.
So for you, aside from the location, what makes ABC kind of the most iconic pool hall in New York?
Well, first of all, thank you for the compliment. I mean, but having thanked you for the compliment, I think that we're arguably the most iconic pool hall or billiard club in the country, not just New York. There are some others.
This is what I wanted you to say. I wanted you to come out and say, yeah, we're the best in the country, AK.
Well, I don't want to say we're the best in the country. I don't want to be that full of myself, but I certainly we're one of the most famous, if not the most famous in the country. And there are some great billiard clubs out there, you know, all over the country. So I don't want to, you know, sound like an arrogant New Yorker. So what makes us, well, let me put it this way. We've lasted 34 years. And I think that makes us one of the longest lasting billiard clubs out there. I know there are places like Chris's, I believe, in Chicago that have been around longer than us. And I'm sure there are others that have been, but to be around for 34 years sets us apart from most other billiard clubs. And especially, you know, 34 years in a city that's as hard. It's tough making a living in New York. It's the old, you know, the Frank Sinatra song. If you can make it here, you can make it anywhere. But it's you know, it's not easy. But we're very proud of that. So, what do I attribute it to? I mean, you know, so many things. But probably, and I don't want to give too many of our secrets away either. So I'm walking a tightrope here. You know, I think the fact that I've, you know, first of all, it was my brother and myself, my brother Ethan and myself. There have been two managing partners from the get-go. It's been mostly myself the last 20, 25 years. But both of us, this is our main business. And we, as you know, you don't see us here all the time, but even when we're not here, we get daily sales reports from our managers. We get shift notes. And so we're very much involved. This is our baby. And so I would say that owner, you know, manager involvement is a key, not just to the billiard club business, but to any business.
So you're not just sitting back as an investor. That's why I kind of introduced as owner operator, because I do see you as kind of heavily involved.
I think that, let me, I mean, I might be going ahead and answering some questions that you haven't asked yet, but
okay.
We've been through various cycles in the billiard club industry and the pool industry in general. When we opened in the 1990s, pool was just exploding. It was maybe at the peak of its popularity ever. And at that point, I think there were up close to 100 pool rooms in New York City, all five boroughs, Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens.
100.
I think there were close to 100. I think someone at one point actually looked at the yellow pages. Back then we had yellow pages. For those of your listeners old enough to remember that.
I'm old enough for those.
But there were close to 100. And I think today there are, you know, maybe 10. And so what does that tell you? It tells you, A, that even though I know you think pool is thriving today, it's not thriving as much as it was in the 1990s. B, it's a tougher business than everyone thinks. If it was easy, then all 100 of those pool halls would still be open, and 90 of them have closed.
Yeah.
It's, you know, people think, they look at a pool room, they think all I got to do is I got to rent a space, build it out, buy or lease some pool tables, and I'm in business. Just isn't that easy. And you got to really work it. You got to know what works and what doesn't work. You know, do we do leagues? Do we do tournaments? What kind of leagues? What kind of tournaments? You know, what kind of music? I mean, you know, what kind of ambiance? I mean, it's a million, you know, little details, but in the aggregate, you add them all up, and it's a difference between being around for 34 years and closing within a year or two, which most pool rooms did over the course of the last 34 years.
So would you attribute your success to maybe focusing on your regular crowd versus a tournament every so often?
That's certainly one of the reasons. I mean, you know, probably the biggest, I don't want to say what the biggest is, but certainly one of the biggest up there is hiring the right people.
Right.
We've got a great staff, Del. I mean, you know, most of them, and they're not all perfect. I mean, and I'm not perfect, but overall, I think our staff is fantastic. They understand the game. They understand what it means to be a customer in a pool room. we focus on customer relations. We don't get it right all the time, but we try to. And if someone comes to us and they're unhappy about something, we try to address whatever the issue is. But having a great staff is, as important as any other factor.
And I think they're all fantastic. Even during COVID, everyone rallied around them. Those guys, it was a difficult time. So for you to survive, not only, like you said, the 1 in 10 or the 10% ratio of success, you also survived through, I think, a global pandemic.
Yeah. And that was, if I can interject, that was an extremely difficult time for everyone, obviously. But for pool rooms in New York State, it was particularly difficult. Some people know this, but I don't know, for those of you or those who don't, our entire industry, pool halls were closed for almost a year. And in the beginning, we understood, because at that time was Governor Andrew Cuomo.
That's right.
And we understood in the beginning because he closed everything. And, in the beginning, it was pure panic. No one knew what was going on. And I never had a hard time with being closed in the beginning. But when it became an issue, it was when he started allowing other industries to open up, and we weren't allowed to open up. And we were sitting there while he allowed bowling alleys to open up, while he allowed casinos to open up. And finally, we were like, what the hell is going on here? Why are bowling alleys allowed to be open and not pool rooms? So we lobbied his office, Governor Cuomo's office, and sent him, I don't go into details, but we sent him packages and letters and signed by, employees, signed by, managers, and we said, look, we have about 1,000 employees just in New York alone that are not working. Can you please put us back to work? If you allow billiard clubs bowling alleys to reopen, why not billiard clubs? He never responded. Their office, we never even got a response. If they had said, look, we're working on it, sure. We never even got a response from them. One of the many reasons I hate politicians. But anyway, that's another conversation altogether.
Let me ask you, was it because of the cloth? Was it something to do with the felt?
I'll tell you that in a second.
Oh, okay. Jump in.
But anyway, we finally sued him. We hired a lawyer. And it was us in conjunction with several other billiard clubs. And to make a long story short, we sued him, we went to court, and we won.
Yes. One for the
so it's one of the proudest moments of my life. Not just me. There were about 16 pool room owners. So it was a collective effort on our part. But I was one of the ringleaders, and it was one of the prouder moments of my life to have brought Andrew Cuomo, the governor of New York, to court and to have beaten him in court. So
that's an amazing story.
But I'm sorry. But to get back to the main reason they gave for keeping us closed. I mean, and in retrospect, it sounded ridiculous at the time, but even now it even sounds more ridiculous. Cuomo's main reason, or his health office, their main reason was that the cloth was porous and it could absorb COVID germs and it could get from one person to another. But here's what made that ridiculous. He allowed casinos to open up. Have you ever seen a poker table?
Way thicker.
Have you ever seen a craps table? They have the same cloth.
I even think it's more dense.
It's the same cloth as so it was so patently absurd. Yeah. And so why did he allow casinos to open up and not? They were a much bigger industry. They had a bigger lobbyist.
Yeah.
And so they got his ear. We were small in a small industry, so we didn't. And that's the argument we made to the judge. The judge basically wrote a decision, I think, within 48 hours. It was one of the quickest decisions ever made by any judge in New York State. It was an injunction, which is if you know anything about law, and it's very tough to get a judge to issue an injunction. And the judge issued an injunction within 48 hours saying, this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. I mean, in essence, saying this is the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
How much time did you have to wait for that to come through? And how long were you out of business?
Well, it was a total of almost a year. Wow. We were closed in March, and we couldn't reopen until February of the following year.
Yeah.
So 11 months.
Yeah, that was a dark time for Paul. I remember it all too well, being stuck at home and, not even being able to go out and do the things you want to do. I'm going to switch you to a happier memory.
Okay.
I love the exhibitions that you run here. And, most recently we just did Efren Reyes. We were fortunate enough to help commentate on that one as part of the team.
Right.
Which one's been your favorite one over the years, and how many now has Amsterdam run?
All right, first of all, it was Efren Reyes versus Torsten Homan.
Oh, of course.
Okay, don't forget Torsten.
I'm going to come on to Torsten in a bit, so
okay.
I won't forget you, Torsten. Don't worry, buddy.
Okay. My favorites. Well, I mean, let me take it one step. How many? I don't even know how many. I haven't kept track. We do about 2 or 3 a year, and we've been doing that on and off for maybe 10 years, maybe longer. So, minus the 1 year we were closed due to COVID, you do the math, but we think it's expensive to do these. People don't realize that
That's what I want to dig into.
well, Efren doesn't show up for free. Torsten doesn't show up for free, and I don't expect him to show up for free. We lose a lot of table time. We put a lot of money into advertising or promoting it. So they're very expensive to do. That's one of the reasons most rooms don't do them.
Right.
Because we have the financial resources to do it. Most rooms don't. But in terms of my favorite, they're all great. They really are. I mean, anything with Efren, anything with Earl Strickland. We love Mika. We love Torsten. I mean, any time you've got the privilege to have the Billiard Hall of Famer in our room, it's going to be a special event. And the one thing at Amsterdam Billiards, which is there's some, over the years, some of our Hall of Famers like Torsten and Mika, we see them here all the time. Like you see them here all the time. So kind of take them for granted. And so when Efren shows up and when Earl Strickland shows up, it's a big deal. But having Torsten Homan or Mika Imanen here on a daily basis is such a privilege to us, and I never forget that. And we're really very.
It was particularly, I remember one particularly emotional, which was Jeanette Lee, the Black Widow, and you gave a fantastic speech, and the support that you're kind of giving to her and her family.
Yeah,
incredible.
We raised a lot of money for her and donated a lot of money to her. I thought, first of all, she. When we first opened up, I think the first year in business, she was one of our first cocktail waitresses.
Oh, was she?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
I always give her a hard time and remind her of that.
It's funny how they start off in pool halls. Everyone does.
We also, she had never taken a formal lesson, or at least had never paid for a lesson. And we paid for Jeanette Lee's first pool lesson.
Really?
Back in 1990 or 1991. With an old guy named Abe Rosen, who was a stalwart on the New York pool scene. But anyway, that was very touching, and that was about a year and a half ago. And we did, and thankfully, we raised a lot of money. We also, I should say, we also had a fundraiser for our local firehouse after 9/11.
Oh wow!
That was in the Upper West Side location, and David Brenner, my partner, who's the former comedian. On the Johnny Carson show. I think Paul Sorvino was there, Jerry Orbach, and Jeanette Lee was there. In fact, I have a poster in my office about that. I can bring it out if you want me to show it. But that was a big one because at our local firehouse, which is right around the corner from the original Amsterdam Billiard Club in the Upper West Side on Amsterdam Avenue, the local firehouse, I think they had, I don't remember, it was like 4 or 5 of their firemen had died on 9/11 trying to rescue the people. And that was very touching. And we had a bunch of the firemen there at the fundraiser also.
Right.
So I guess if I had to pick my 2 favorites, it would be the 9/11 fundraiser and then the fundraiser we had for Jeanette Lee.
I love that. And looking around the room, I mean, you talked about vibe, you talked about, the aesthetic. Talk about that just a little bit more, and some of the memorabilia that's hanging up on the walls, that you've collected over the years. Is any particular ones that stand out for you?
Well, most of the memorabilia I have, it's not even on the walls. They're in my office or at home. So we have, enormous amount. I mean, just having posters, over the years. I mean, before the internet or before we all went digital, we did a lot of promotions via posters. Now everything obviously is done with social media and with the website, but nothing really stands out except maybe that poster I have for the 9/11 fundraiser.
I liked a few. So when I first came to New York, I'd never heard of straight pool. So of course I was keen to try that particular discipline. And this was known as like the straight pool heaven. Danny, it's Danny Baruti.
Yep.
You see as you walk through, Tony Robles.
Yeah,
they're all up on the wall there.
Yeah.
Any particular straight pool players? I mean, Torsten Homan, obviously. I'm going to come back to him in a moment, but
that come to mind. I mean, I guess Steve Miserak.
Miz was here.
Steve Miserak was at the Upper West Side location and the Upper East Side location. I'm not sure he was down here, but Steve came. I mean, we would have tournaments and piggyback, like a few days before a major tournament would be held in New York. And there were at least 2 or 3 major straight pool tournaments held in New York in the 90s and maybe early 2000s. But anyway, we saw Steve Miserak, I don't know, I met him at least a dozen times more. I've had lunch with him. And I've asked him who he thought is the best pool player of all time he'd played against was. And if you want to know that answer, I'm happy to give that to you. That was an interesting one. But of all the straight pool players, I mean, but we had Jimmy Fusco, Pete Fusco, Larry Lascotti. I don't know if these names mean anything to you.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the game. So, you know, just talking to people on the road, you know, you hear all these names come about, and you have so many long-standing members of this club that they'll talk to you about just about anything if you want to listen. I mean, me and my wife talked about just writing a book based on stories people tell you.
Someone should write a book.
I'm telling you, just
already some of the stories are they're out there, forgotten and being, you know, lost forever. But someone should write a book.
I wonder if you remember for the right reasons. You know, there's a lot of negativity that surrounds pool, and I don't think that's always the case.
Yeah, but it's also fun stories, and you know, I don't think it has to be squeaky clean either. It can be a mix of some clean stuff and some old school pool hall stuff.
Well, tell me this then. This isn't, you know, we're not capped in any way. So what would be your most memorable story over the years inside this room?
I don't know. The stories that come to mind are like funny stories.
Yeah.
All right, you want to hear a funny story?
Yeah, go for it, man.
And it does involve a Billiard Hall of Famer by the name of Cicero Murphy.
Cicero, yeah.
I don't know if you Cicero. He's the only African-American member of the Billiard Hall of Fame.
His son still comes in.
He does. Son is Cicero Murphy Jr. And it's an interesting question as to why there's only one African-American member of the Billiard Hall of Fame. And I'm not suggesting that it's necessarily due to racism, but I think we'd like to see more African-Americans play pool. And
with powerful being Juneteenth today.
And today is Juneteenth. So it's an interesting coincidence. But anyway, so I'll tell you Cicero Murphy's story. Cicero Murphy, I mean, he was basically the Jackie Robinson of pool. I don't want to, there's a whole other separate.
That's a huge statement.
Conversation, but he was banned from playing in tournaments during the 1950s and 60s.
Wow. Because
he was black. And finally he demonstrated along with other African Americans, and he was finally allowed to play in tournaments. But he absolutely, to my mind, was the Jackie Robinson of pool. Anyway, he was also a very funny guy. And by the time we knew him, it was in the 90s. You know, he was getting on in age. He was probably in his 60s, which I am now. So, but back then he was an older guy because I was in my 40s or 30s. But he came in once and he walked very slowly, and and at the Upper West Side there was a long distance from the entrance to where the manager station was, and a bunch of us were around the manager station, and the U.S. Treasury had just issued a new $100 bill. And I don't know if you know, but back then we'd had the same $100 bill for decades, for my entire life. And all of a sudden they came out with the new $100 bill, and we're all looking at the new $100 bill. And Cicero Murphy walked up, and I saw him, and I said, "Cicero, have you seen the new $100 bill?" And he looked at me, said, "The new $100 bill? I still haven't seen the old $100 bill."
What a player he was. And I see he's got his picture up on the wall here.
Right over there.
Yeah, I was looking that way. Cicero, because I've had lots of nice conversations with his son, especially when he's been down to watch the finals of the 14-1 sometime. Things like that. It's been really, really nice. But a lot of the exhibitions.
Yeah.
I love that, man. I love a little bit of lightheartedness in there. So what's the future plans then? What's the future plans for ABC? Is there any renovation going in? Are you happy with how?
Well, we are doing a renovation.
Okay.
We just renovating our bathrooms. It's going to be in several phases. Have you seen the new bathroom?
I haven't seen it yet, no.
Well, you got it.
I got to go have a look.
Check it out. Can we pause this? I want you to go check out the bathroom.
Want me to go look now?
And come back to you and to tell your audience how wonderful our bathroom looks.
Let me just check. Hold on, we'll B-roll the bathroom.
It's just the men's room, Del.
We'll turn the microphone off.
Okay. Yeah.
But he's not first. Look at this.
Yeah, it's being done right now.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're all decked out.
Yeah.
Beautiful subway tile. Look at this. So I really am in the bathroom.
It might be one of all the interviews in history where the guy said, "Go check out my bathroom."
Thank you.
Oh, we're back.
You weren't lying, Greg. You're going for the, it probably picked up, sorry, stuck in there, but I think I'm still wearing my mic, which is funny. That lovely subway green tiles, lovely. And you're going to do the same in the ladies?
It's being worked on right now, and that's just we're basically doing renovation. It's going to take a couple of years because we're spending a lot of money, and we have to spread it out. But next step is to redo the cafe, the bar, cafe area, or lounge area, and then we'll be doing the entire room.
Wow! So watch this space for you guys investing in the future. I love that.
Yeah, it's the old axiom where you have to spend money to make money, and we're doing that right now.
Well, I've noticed you're one of the few billiard halls that gets very popular, like Thursday, Friday night crowd. I don't know if that's because of the club next door or things like that, but you do have a very trendy, busy bar in the evenings.
Yeah,
for people that aren't even playing pool.
I'm sorry?
People that aren't even playing.
Yeah, that's part of what makes us able to pay our rent is the bar itself is very popular, and we do have customers that come in just for the bar, don't necessarily play pool, but it's the audience varies and changes according to the day of the week and according to the time of day. On a Monday night we have our straight pool league, and so it tends to be mostly guys, mostly older guys, frankly, although I shouldn't say that. The ages are mixed, but more serious players. The music is a little bit lower.
Yeah.
And then versus Saturday night where it's mostly, 20-somethings and it's banging in here. And sometimes, in our busy season, we can be 4 or 5 deep at the bar. It's I don't know if you've ever been here on a Saturday night. Most of our serious players,
I drink every day, Andrew.
Well, that's true. So do I. But most of our serious players don't even show up on Friday and Saturday nights because it gets it's a zoo in here. It's a fun zoo.
Yeah.
But it's very crowded, and it's not a great time for the serious players to hit balls.
And you mentioned the league there. How important are the leagues to you? And I notice you run your own in-house leagues versus having them hosted by an external party. Why is that?
Well, we have all the leagues. We have APA leagues. We had when Tony Robles and Gail were running their league. I forget the name of their league.
The BCA or UP something?
Yes. I'm embarrassed to say I forget, but it's been a few years since I guess they closed it. But we have our own in-house leagues. We have APA leagues. Anybody that wants to run a league here, we have an open architecture, as they say on Wall Street. But our house leagues are by far the biggest. And it took us 20 years to build them up to where they are now. Right now we have. Depends on we have 3 different leagues, but during a busy season, we have almost 500 people playing in our leagues. And the off season right now, we still have about 400 people playing in the league. So it's still pretty big. I think it's the biggest house league in the country.
Wow.
And we're very proud of that. And again, it's one of many, many, many stepping stones or whatever you want to call it to having a successful billiard club.
Is it every day of the week, you said?
It's every day, every night of the week, except for Fridays and Saturdays. If your regular business can't sustain you on Friday, if your regular walk-in business can't sustain you on Friday or Saturday nights, and you're not going to make it.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point to make. You mentioned you're a bit of a player yourself. I'd like to know more about what's in your bag. What do you play with?
My favorite game is straight pool.
Okay.
And my high run is 26.
Yes. So challenge to all the other room owners out there. What's your high run?
So, but I have to say, in defense of that measly number, that I ran it twice.
Oh,
and I'm convinced the reason I missed this 27th ball the second time was I was so nervous at beating my own high run that I missed the 27th ball. But no, one downside to being a room owner, at least for me, is that I don't play pool that much anymore. It becomes a business,
right?
And I still enjoy drinking at my bar, but when we first opened up, I was playing in our leagues, and it's hard to enjoy the leagues because as an owner, I'm looking around. Why is that waiter? Why is that server not hustling more? Why is my manager on his or her cell phone? You're distracted constantly by things that bother owners. And also when I've played in the league, if I beat one of my customers, I would feel bad that I beat this poor guy or woman. And then if I lost, I was always pissed off. So it was like either way, I was going to not have a good time playing in my own leagues. So I stopped playing in the leagues, and I don't play. And my customers, you've rarely seen me play. but I love the game. I absolutely love it. And ironically, I'll play if I'm playing if I'm at a bar or if I'm in another pool room, I'll play and I love it. But in my own place, there's too many distractions.
I've only ever seen you with the house cue, so that's why I was kind of curious. Are you rocking a custom?
I have a Hubler. I don't even know if Hubler's still in business.
Oh, he's not. Well, he's not, but he's still a very well-regarded cue maker.
When we first opened up in 1990, Hubler was a very popular brand, and my brother and I both got Hubler cues, and so I still have my Hubler, which is at this point is 34 years old. Yep.
Wow, that thing must be straight. Is it straight? And how much emphasis do you put on, you mentioned there the staff and everyone around you. How much emphasis do you put on the house player? Because you've had some iconic house players over the years, or house pros, sorry.
Yeah. Well, currently our house pro is Torsten Imanen, and Torsten Homan. Sorry, that was a combination of Torsten and Mika. No, Torsten is our house pro and has been our house pro now, I'm guessing for 5 years, maybe.
I think you're right, yeah.
I've got to ask Torsten that. But Torsten, again, it's such an honor for any billiard club to have as their house pro a member of the Billiard Hall of Fame.
Sure.
And I can't overemphasize that. And it is a total honor for us to have Torsten here. And even though we don't, he might think that we don't necessarily treat him like a star, like a celebrity, the celebrity that he is every time because he's here every day. He is a celebrity, and I view him as a celebrity as much as Eric Clapton or Bruce Willis or all the other celebrities that have been here at Amsterdam Billiard Club. And so to have Torsten as our house pro is a great honor and one that we cherish. Previous to Torsten was Tony Robles. We love Tony. The only thing he had over Torsten was he was born and raised a New Yorker, so he was a native New Yorker. So Torsten can't take that away from Tony. But otherwise, obviously, everything else is, Torsten is an amazing person on every level. But Tony was our house pro, I think, for longer than 5 years. Again, I'm embarrassed to say I don't remember how many years.
Like 2012, it was 2010, maybe 2012, I think. Could be as far back as that. You also had Mika concurrently,
Mika was never officially our house pro. I mean, Mika's been here.
This is his table, right?
For years.
The table that he liked, the tight pocket.
But I mean, so many pros have been here. And then prior to Tony Robles was a guy named Rolando Aravina. I don't know if you know Rolando.
That's the name I don't know.
Rolando was a great guy. He ran our leagues mainly on the Upper West Side. So this is going back 17 years. Rolando gave lessons. He was a tremendous house pro, not in the Billiard Hall of Fame. Neither is Tony, although I would argue that Tony should be in the Billiard Hall of Fame, but that's another conversation.
Sure.
But Rolando was a great house pro, and he, like many New Yorkers, left New York and is now living in Florida, which I'll never forgive him for.
So Tony, if you're watching,
and Tony also left New York for Florida. It's becoming a trend that I find to be highly annoying.
We support you as an inductee in the future of the Hall of Fame, but come back from Florida.
All best possible worlds, Tony would come back to New York and be inducted into the Billiard Hall of Fame.
So you mentioned, we were talking whilst we're on the equipment side, how what chose you to pick Brunswick originally? And was it for the vibe or
back in the 90s? Brunswick was basically it was the one. And the tables are fantastic tables. I don't want to say anything negative about any brand, but I think the ones made back in the day that were made in the United States were and are much better quality than the ones that are currently made abroad. I hate to cast aspersions, but I think that's the case. So if we were to do a new room, I'm not sure it would be Brunswick, but we love these Brunswicks. They're solid, really well-made tables.
Like 30 years old, right?
Yeah, I think these were not the original tables. I think we bought these, if memory serves, in the early 2000s. But they were they are old, and they're great, and they're well made, and we highly cherish them.
That's fantastic. I mean, coming, just sort of winding down. If there was one thing that you could change about the pool industry, what would that be, and why?
I think I would change it. I would say, I've been in this for 34 years right now. And again, I keep on mentioning that number. I'm sorry to be repetitive, but and it makes me feel old just to keep on mentioning that. But everyone's always talked about why isn't the pro sport, why hasn't it still risen? And I would say a couple of things. One is there are signs that it's on the rise right now. So I would say, what just happened in Saudi Arabia is pretty phenomenal.
Matchroom Pool, yeah.
Matchroom Pool is doing a phenomenal job. I know everyone complains. We've hosted a lot of tournaments ourselves back in the day. We had at least a half dozen tournaments that were televised on ESPN, and I know how as a tournament host. Everyone complains. The customers complain, the players complain, and it's not easy. And I know that Matchroom gets complaints, but overall, I think most players would agree to this, that they're doing a pretty good job, and as good a job as anyone else doing it. But circle back to your question, what would I do differently? What I think the pro side of the sport or of the industry, we really need a great promoter out there, and maybe it's Matchroom. I don't know. I don't know them. The guys, the people. I think it's Emily Fraser.
Emily Fraser. Yeah.
I don't know her well enough. I've only met her once briefly. Maybe she's the one. But I've always felt that what made boxing so famous was Don King.
Oh, right.
He might have been a questionable person in many ways, but I think Don King was one of the best sports promoter ever. Baseball had George Steinbrenner.
Okay.
Great promoter. Basketball had the Laker guy, Jerry Buss. They had Daniel Stern, I think was the commissioner of the NBA that turned took a domestic sport and made it international. Football, I don't know football as well, but Al Davis was an owner. I could go on and on and on, but every sport has promoters that have done an amazing job in transforming the sport and reaching a broader audience.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think pool has ever had that. And I think that's what we need.
It's a real investment, isn't it? So,
but it's getting someone or it might be a company. It doesn't have to be one individual, but it's getting someone that loves pool, but has the wherewithal, the financial resources, and the organizational background to actually make it happen. And we haven't, again, Emily, all respect sent to or due to Emily Fraser, because I think she's doing a great job, but it still needs to be promoted more in the U.S. And I think she does a very good job promoting it in the U.K. I think we need it. Until I see it on U.S. TV, we need it. We need more exposure in the U.S. So that's what I would say. We need a Don King, a George Steinbrenner, a really wealthy, experienced guy who's experienced in marketing and promotions to come in. It can't be the players themselves. I love the players. The players are as smart as anybody I've met, but they play pool. They do what they know. You need a full-time promoter, a marketing person, and haven't seen that yet.
That's a good point to make. And, Barry Hearn, obviously with snooker, and Eddie Hearn now, his son, is kind of like taking the reins, and they've been successful in the snooker arena and the darts arena.
But in the UK.
In the UK, but they've made it not a global sport as much. Snooker's not played over here. Darts is getting bigger in the US. People are starting to invest in darts.
You make a very good point, Del, and let me rephrase it. I think we need a Barry Hearns. Is it Hearn or Hearns?
Hearn.
I think we need a Barry Hearn. Again, I met Barry briefly, and I so appreciate and total kudos to him for what he's done with Nine Ball. But we need him to promote it in the U.S., and I think he's more focused on the U.K. and Europe and maybe Asia. I don't know. I don't follow.
That could be our next one when he's going to be entering the first round of the U.S. Open in order to try and promote more in the U.S., I believe. So you make a very valid point.
I want to see it on TV in the U.S.
Yeah.
And I want to see it on ESPN. And in the 90s, it was on ESPN, but it was the women.
Yeah.
Back then, people forget that the women's side of the industry were more organized, I think, better organized than the men. And you would see Jeanette Lee and Ava Mattia and Lori John Jones back then. You'd see them on ESPN on a regular basis. It was fantastic. It was great.
Yeah.
And we need to see that again, both the women and the men.
The women's game's coming, the WPBA is doing great things on the tour, especially in America. But again, it's not really global at this point, and everybody's coming here to play in it. And again, it's just not getting the spotlight it deserves.
Look, the global aspect of the sport is fantastic. And the fact that, again, I can't say how impressive. I mean, I've seen photos and videos of the Saudi tournament and just fantastic. And to get the Saudis involved in any sport, obviously with their financial resources is a huge step forward. But also, I think, the fact that the sport is so popular in Asia, in the Philippines, in Taiwan, and China is fantastic. So it doesn't necessarily, I'm not saying it has to be popular in the U.S. If it's popular in those countries, it'll filter back to the U.S.
We have to catch up on the development of the professional player from the junior through to the pro.
Yeah.
I think that's probably where places like APAC and EMEA
yeah, that's part of that. That's going to take too long. I don't have, I'm 66. I don't want to wait another 20 years. So I want to see this done in the next 5 years or the next 10 years.
Yeah, I think we touched on every topic there, Greg. So I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to host us here at Amsterdam as well.
My pleasure.
I'm eternally grateful for, the venue to try and, because you supported me when I first came to New York, which meant the world to me. And really set up a platform of success. And although I'm not, I'm not at the echelon where I would have loved to have been, I'm very stable in New York now, and I owe a lot of that success. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. I appreciate those words, and great. This was a great interview.
Thank you so much, man.
Thanks, Val.
I'm a bit warm, but
Okay, man.
thanks, guys. Yeah.